The spring of 2025 brought a wave of anxiety that swept across the country. In towns and cities, people found themselves gripped by uncertainty, their daily routines shadowed by a sense of unease. Supermarket aisles, once bustling with confident shoppers, now echoed with quiet conversations about what might come next. In May, President Trump, having returned to the Oval Office, announced sweeping tariffs on imported goods, electronics, fruit, clothing, and countless other essentials. The message was clear. America would take a stand to protect its own industries no matter the cost. His goal was ambitious: to protect American jobs, revive domestic manufacturing, and force companies to bring their production back to the USA. The administration promised that these bold moves would strengthen the nation's economy and restore pride in "Made in America." But this time, the president went further than ever before. He singled out Walmart, the nation's largest retailer, demanding that the company absorb the entire cost of the tariffs so that shoppers wouldn't see higher prices on the shelves. The message was blunt and unmistakable. Walmart, not American families, would foot the bill for this new economic policy. The president insisted that ordinary people should not have to pay more for their groceries and everyday goods. It was a bold and unprecedented move, pitting the White House directly against the nation's most powerful retailer. The confrontation quickly became the talk of the nation, dominating headlines and sparking heated debates. Walmart responded almost immediately, holding press conferences and issuing statements. The company explained that it simply couldn't absorb billions in new costs without harming its business, its employees, and the communities it served. The company drew a clear line in the sand. It was not a government agency and could not be expected to subsidize national policy at its own expense. Walmart's leadership argued that such a demand was unsustainable and unfair. The standoff was public, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. News outlets covered every development, and Americans everywhere debated who should bear the burden of these new tariffs. Suddenly, tariffs weren't just a distant Washington debate, they were about to hit every American shopper, every family, and every household budget. The question wasn't if prices would rise, but how much and how soon. Shoppers watched as price tags were changed overnight, and the cost of everyday items began to climb. The president's gamble to shield consumers had failed. Despite his intentions, the reality was that no single company could absorb such a massive financial blow. Instead, the nation was set on a new path, one marked by economic uncertainty, market volatility, and growing concern among families and business owners alike. Walmart's refusal made it clear the cost would be passed on to consumers. Prices at the checkout counter began to rise, and shoppers felt the impact with every trip to the store. The confrontation between government and big business left millions of families bracing for impact, anxiously calculating how to stretch their budgets further as the cost of living soared. The promise of protection had evaporated, replaced by a new reality of higher prices and shrinking savings. For many, the American dream felt just a little further out of reach. Now, the reality of higher prices was about to hit home in a very personal way. Families gathered around kitchen tables, reviewing receipts and wondering how they would make ends meet. The nation watched, anxious and uncertain as the story unfolded. People tuned into the news, searching for answers and hoping for relief, but finding only more questions. The era of cheap, predictable shopping was over. A new chapter had begun, one defined by unpredictability, tough choices, and a nation waiting to see what would come next. The effects were immediate. Almost overnight, the familiar routine of shopping for groceries and household items was disrupted. People who once strolled the aisles with confidence now moved with uncertainty, glancing nervously at the shelves. Within weeks, price tags at stores across America crept upward, sometimes changing so quickly that employees struggled to keep up. A toy that was $19.99 now cost $26.99. Bananas jumped nearly 40%. Even the most basic items like bread and milk saw noticeable increases. Everyday essentials became luxuries for many families. Parents found themselves making tough choices, putting back items they once took for granted. The tariffs, once a distant policy debated in the news, were now a daily burden felt at every checkout. The headlines became personal. Shoppers felt betrayed, promised protection, but faced with higher bills. The sense of security had vanished, replaced by frustration and confusion. Grocery trips became stressful calculations: fruit or detergent, shoes or school supplies. Every purchase was weighed against another, as families tried to stretch their budgets further than ever before. The pain spread beyond Walmart. Target, Best Buy, local stores all raised prices. No corner of retail was spared, and no shopper was immune. The cost of living soared, outpacing wages and squeezing families. Budgets were rewritten, and sacrifices became the new normal. Shopping became a hunt for deals, coupons, and cheaper brands. People spent more time searching for bargains, hoping to ease the strain. Even these efforts couldn't keep up with the relentless price hikes. Discounts that once brought relief now felt insignificant. The aisles, once symbols of abundance, now felt like obstacle courses. Shoppers navigated crowded shelves, searching for affordable options. The dream of always low prices was shattered. The promise that once defined American shopping had faded. The new economic reality was clear. Everyone was paying the price. Conversations at dinner tables turned to worry and uncertainty. The shockwaves of the tariffs were felt in every American home, leaving families to wonder when or if things would ever return to normal. As prices soared across the United States, families everywhere felt the pinch at the checkout counter. Everyday essentials like milk, bread, and eggs became noticeably more expensive, and many households started searching for creative ways to stretch their budgets further. For Americans living near the northern border, a surprising solution emerged: shopping in Canada, where prices on many goods remained lower. What began as a handful of families making quick trips for groceries soon grew into a widespread movement, as word spread about the savings to be found just across the border. Social media platforms lit up with stories and tips, as shoppers shared photos of their receipts and boasted about big savings on diapers, coffee, cleaning supplies, and more. Even after factoring in the cost of gas for the drive and the exchange rate between US and Canadian dollars, the deals were simply too good for many to pass up. Soon, border crossings became jammed with American cars, their trunks and back seats ready to be filled with bargain finds from Canadian stores. For many, shopping in Canada was more than just a money-saving tactic. It became an act of defiance against rising costs at home and a way to provide for their families. It was a way to push back against inflation, to reclaim some control over their household budgets, and to find relief from the frustration of ever-increasing prices. This trend quickly earned a nickname: the Great Northern Migration. As more and more Americans joined the cross-border shopping wave, news outlets soon picked up the story, interviewing families who reported saving hundreds of dollars each month by making the trip north. For many, these cross-border shopping trips became a vital lifeline, helping them make ends meet and keep food on the table during tough economic times. The border, once just a line on the map, transformed into a gateway to affordability and hope for struggling families. For countless American families, Canada offered not just lower prices, but a sense of relief and optimism in a time of economic uncertainty. Canadian retailers quickly embraced their new American customers. Stores like Loblaws and Canadian Tire advertised in U.S. border towns, highlighting lower prices and accepting U.S. dollars. Flyers compared prices directly, making the savings obvious. Canadian stores became a haven from high U.S. prices. The result: booming sales, expanded hours, and more jobs in Canadian border cities. Even small businesses thrived from the influx. The economic boost fueled national pride. Canada was now the land of value. Profits were reinvested in stores and supply chains. The border cities flourished, their economies revitalized by American shoppers. For Canada, the tariffs were an unexpected gift. The retail landscape was transformed, and the relationship with U.S. consumers was forever changed. Across the border, American towns felt the pain. Shoppers left for Canada, and Canadian tourists stopped coming south. Local stores saw sales plummet, parking lots emptied, small businesses struggled, and even big box stores suffered. Money flowed north, leaving American communities in decline. Job losses followed, hours cut, layoffs, and closures. For lease signs appeared on main streets. The very workers' tariffs were meant to protect lost their jobs. The border became a stark economic dividing line. Prosperity on one side, hardship on the other, a tale of two borders. The unintended consequences of the trade war were devastating for many American towns. U.S. retailers fought back with price matches, discounts, and loyalty programs. State governments launched Buy Local campaigns, urging shoppers to support their communities. But the math didn't work. Tariffs made U.S. prices too high to compete. Even with deals, Canadian prices were lower. Shoppers, sympathetic but practical, kept heading north. The fight for customers became a losing battle. Local efforts slowed the exodus but couldn't stop it. Retailers watched helplessly as their customer base eroded. The trade war had priced them out of their own market. The tariff shock of 2025 changed shopping forever. Every purchase became a political act. buy American and pay more or cross the border and save. The president's promise of new jobs clashed with the reality of retail layoffs and economic decline. The border, once a place of friendly exchange, became a symbol of division. Tariffs fueled political debate and family arguments. The policy's unintended consequences were clear: disrupted lives, fractured communities, and a new sense of economic anxiety. Shopping was no longer routine. It was a statement of values and survival. The trade war had redrawn the map of daily life. For millions, the simple act of buying groceries became a journey through a changed America. The relationship between consumers, businesses, and government would never be the same.